All right. Welcome, everybody. And thank you so much for your understanding and your patience as we needed to reschedule this. But here we are for week 2 of the primary session for the Behavior Community of Practice with Christine Manning. And as you can see there, I'm sure many of you were probably excited to have this session come as it's looking for those students who might engage in those power struggles or non-compliance or just even their lack of motivation. So I know for myself, I'm very excited to have Christine present this information for us. And again, as we go through, we will have a Jamboard for you this time because of the number of attendees. I do have 4 different boards for you, so I'll put those up in just a second. I do just want to remind you that these sessions will be recorded, and the recording link will be sent in your follow-up email when it's available. And then also, if you have signed in today, I will have your information. If you are attending today in a group, please send me an email with a sign-in sheet with the first and last name and emails of each person attending to make sure that that attendance is locked in for you. And then, of course, use the Q&A and the Jamboard, but please make sure that those questions are general and your comments are general so that, especially with our time, because there will just be a few minutes at the end that Christine has agreed to stay on to answer those questions for you. And so let's see here. These are the Jamboard links. And in just a second, I will pop those in the chat for you, and I'll keep doing it for those who are joining late. Just so that you have those Jamboards, and feel free to do it even after the session. Christine does go in and look at every one of these. And so once again, Christine, thank you so much for being here. I'm going to just go ahead and quickly turn the time over to you so that you can get started. So welcome, and here we go.
Thanks, Dina. Thanks for being here, you guys. I apologize for last week. Just had some technical difficulties that were unforeseen. So thank you for being patient, and thank you for being here today. I always have so much that I want to cover, and I only have an hour. So I know this probably seems like I'm talking so fast, but there's so many great things to share with you guys. I'm hoping that next week or maybe the week after, we can have some more interactive participation where you guys can kind of write maybe in the chat or speak on the microphone about what you've been able to implement and maybe some things that you've seen in your classrooms. So I'm really excited to hear back from you and make it more of an interactive thing. So I do look at the Jamboard questions. Like Dina said, there are a few that I would like to address, and I'm hoping that happens either at the beginning or end of next week. So our learning objectives for today are we're going to understand why kids may engage in misbehavior, including all of the great things that we saw in the previous slide: noncompliance, defiance, work avoidance. And then we're going to learn highly effective evidence-based tier 1 interventions to increase their on-task behavior, reduce defiance, noncompliance, and lack of motivation. So we're going to talk about a lot of things today. When we talk about student supports, these are words I hear all the time. They're non-compliant, they won't follow direction, they're refusing to work, they're defiant. Well, we can work with that, right? And there are some supports that we can put in place so that we can help support our students and for us to remove ourselves from engaging in that type of behavior with them. So why do kids engage in these behaviors? Well, I'll tell you what, one of the most common functions of problem behavior is escape from instructional stimuli. And we're going to talk about what that is and how we can help with that. But I've looked at 3 behavior plans this morning. I coach behavior teams and staff at different LEAs in Utah and Wyoming. And we always have escape from academics or escape from something on that function of the behavior. And we are going to talk a little bit more about this, I think, in week 5. But it's important that we understand why the kids are trying to escape. And you think about yourself. If you were sitting in a class that was boring, or the pacing was too fast or too slow, or you didn't understand the content, you might try to escape as well. So I'm hoping that as teachers, we can reflect on our behavior and change our behavior to, in effect, change the behavior of our students. This stuff is tier 1. It's not going to work for everybody, but it is going to work for most of your kids, about 85% of your students. If you have more a higher need student, then some of these things may work and they may need additional supports as well. So what is instructional stimuli? It's anything related to instruction, right? If you lecture and hand a worksheet out, that's not best practice for teaching. That's not high quality instruction. How can we increase our ability to provide higher quality instruction so that kids stay engaged? It can be discussion, it can be choral responding, it can be the content or the subject being covered. I know all the math teachers are like, yeah, math is a 4-letter word to a lot of our kids. How do we make that fun? How do we reduce their desire to escape if it's difficult for them? Pacing can be an issue. If the pacing of instruction is too fast or too slow, we try to get that just right pace. Not always easy. I remember working on a unit in math when I was a teacher that was supposed to take a week, and it took us 3 weeks. And then I know that we've had other units that I gave the pre-test and everybody got enough of a score on it that we've skipped that chapter and we just did some review. So that pacing is important. Making sure that we're tying the instruction content to prior knowledge. If we just throw out this random thing out into the universe and the kids don't have anything to tether that idea and that new content to, then it's going to float away. It's just like being in outer space. We have to tie that to their prior knowledge and build on that knowledge. And then what kind of work demand you're asking from the kids. Some of them do better with different types of work than others. And as a teacher, you guys have the awesome ability to control what kind of work that child does to show that they have met the standard. So I think when we're looking at what kind of things we're asking the children to produce, we're also looking at how are we monitoring that they've met the standard versus is this just busy work? And we can change some things up with either of those. Here's some things when we're trying to escape or avoid something, we're going to engage in all of these behaviors and more, right? And you think about things that are very aversive to you, and you're going to get out of it if you can. We all are, as human nature. So I'm a behavior analyst. I know some of you love that and some of you don't. I do have most of my experience in the school setting, and I love the school setting, but I need to be able to promote effective learning environments for these kids and work with you collaboratively to provide what you need to support these kids. As a teacher, we have the same goals. We want to provide a high quality education. We want kids to learn and be successful in school and out of school. We want them to go on and lead meaningful and productive lives. And we want them to have access to the community, relationships, and employment. Sometimes we get so focused on the little daily things that we're doing that we might forget the bigger purpose of why we teach. And we teach for many more reasons than this, but these are some of the basic ones. So we're going to talk about tier 1 interventions. I already talked about some of these previous to this presentation in the primary and secondary. So these are just the ones that we are covering in primary. Positive relationships, I covered that in the secondary session last week. I gave a preface of what it is. I don't have a lot of time to go into it too deeply, but there's a lot that goes into that, and it has a very high effect size if the teacher has a good relationship with the students. It helps them grow and learn more and be willing to engage in what you're asking them to do. We're going to talk about appropriate and motivating instructional practices. What is appropriate and what is motivating? And those are two different things, and I break them down, and then I break those down into further sections so that we can really dissect what maybe we can do to enhance our practice. We did talk about high rates of positive responses last week. So if you have your recording or your PowerPoint, you can refer to that. Positive reinforcement, that's a 2-hour presentation of itself. But giving students things that they appreciate and when they're engaging in good behavior to keep that behavior going. Many times that is praise and that's appropriate. Sometimes it's something in addition to that. We talked about rules and expectations to include consequences for following the rules and consequences for not following the rules. This is a game changer. If you haven't done this in your classroom, that's something that you might want to focus on soon because it is a game changer. Positive and supportive redirection. It's different than just regular redirection. It's positive and supportive. And then behavior momentum. We talked about that a couple weeks ago when we met. So let's talk about skill versus will. Skill is having the ability to do something. The skill level, the ability to engage in an activity, and will is the desire to do something. So when we have refusal, noncompliance, avoidance, and escape, could that be a lack of skill or a lack of ability, or could that be a lack of motivation or desire, right? So we're talking about a couple different things. I like this graphic here because we have kids that have lower skills and a motivation to do well. We have kids that have no motivation to do well, but have high skills. We want that perfect, just right kiddo who has high skills and high will to complete the work. And usually when something is easy for a child, they will engage in that work and they will be successful. We need to figure out how we motivate those kids that have lower abilities or lower desires to complete work for whatever reason. So skill means ability means able to. Disability means not able to. And this doesn't mean that a child has to have a disability in order to not do something, right? We have kids that are behind that don't qualify for special education services. They still even may have a disability and not qualify for special education services. So we need to make sure that we're doing our part in locating children that could potentially need special education services and refer them under the federal law child find. And if it's not a special education referral, then what can we do to help that child engage in their learning appropriately so that they are, getting good grades and being successful at school? When our children are not doing what we're asking, I always tell teachers the first thing is look at what we're asking them to do. It may be the level or difficulty of the work. You have your grade level, you have your instructional level, you have your frustration level. Where do they fall in that continuum? If you're asking them to do things independently, it needs to be at their current level. And oftentimes we're giving them work that's at their instructional or frustrational level and they can't engage in that, or it's so hard that it's not worth it to them to engage in that. How much are we asking them to do? I was in a school a couple of weeks ago, and there was a middle school teacher that just handed out this huge math packet. It was about 30 pages, and I just about died. I just thought, that's just so aversive, right? Sitting in that math class and seeing that huge packet come out. And granted, it was for the week, but that's still a lot of worksheets. And I don't know if that was more busy work or if that was really to monitor what that student had learned to inform the teacher's instruction for future lessons. But be mindful of what you're asking the kids to do and the level or difficulty of that work. And then the type of work that you ask them to do. Some kids can't write a journal entry very well. Maybe they dictate that to you and you write it on their desk and they copy it. How can we help our kids be successful, whether it's a skill or a will deficit? And then sometimes our kids are distracted. I know you guys don't have any kids that are distracted in class and they have a difficult time focusing, right? There are specific things that we can do to help support those kids as well. So when we have a skill deficit, we are not able to do something, man, that makes the classroom a difficult place to be successful. And our job as teachers are to teach, and we're only teaching if students are learning. And our other job is to make sure that kids are successful and they're happy at school and they feel safe. And I know we have a lot of responsibility. So when we're looking at skill deficits, there are many deficits that you may feel like the child has a deficit in emotional regulation, and it may affect their academics. And if it does, then that needs to be a conversation for your school administrator to find out how we refer or when we refer to what kind of child study team or some kind of a team to evaluate what supports that student needs to be successful. So we need to know what's appropriate for every student and what does this child need to be successful. I always start by asking teachers, what is the standard? What's their objective? What are we asking them to do? And is there another way for them to show mastery, right? So if we're focusing on teaching skills, does it matter if the child completes the worksheet, or can the child tell you what the answers are so that you know that they have either mastered or not mastered that standard? We do want the kids to meet standards or objectives, and there's a lot of different ways that we can help them to do that. And if they're below level in their skills, we need to figure out how to fill those gaps in. Many times you can use curriculum-based assessments, or even placement assessments, or Dibbles or Acadians assessments, to really see where those holes are and where you need to spend your time teaching in small groups or individual instruction. All right, if you have the will, you have the desire and the motivation to do something. And so think about you as an adult. What motivates you to go do something? What makes you desire to engage in a certain activity? So most of the time I get the following answers. Well, I'm interested in that topic or that activity. It's enticing. There's something I want to learn or achieve. It's fun. It's easy enough that we experience success, right? And even people that are running long distances or doing different kinds of marathons or other kind of activities, they have to be trained up enough that running and engaging in those activities is fun. They're successful. And then it makes us feel good. It's reinforcing. So think about trying to increase the desire and the motivation for some of our kids. So what motivates you to come to work? All of these things. There's days you're probably more motivated and you get home and you're like, man, I rocked the teaching today. And there's probably days that you're less motivated where you're like, well, we're going to put on some educational videos today because I'm not feeling very well. And so you may have your quality of your work on some days be more than other days. And our kids are the same. They're just young humans instead of older humans, right? So when you're less motivated, does that affect your will to do a good job? Does it affect your skill level? Right? And so we all have days that we are engaged in more learning, or we have more motivation for whatever reason to engage in a particular activity. And we want our kids to do that as well. And we need to help them to be fulfilled at school. And some of our kids just are not. Reinforcers or rewards. This is, I wish I had more time to talk about this, but these are things that happen after a behavior that increase the chances of that behavior happening again. We want to catch kids doing the behaviors that we need them to be doing, working, being on task, interacting appropriately with peers, sitting in their seat, raising their hand, whatever those appropriate behaviors are, catching those and providing reinforcement. That could be praise, it could be a token, it could be an extra pom-pom in your jar if you're doing a group contingency that we talked about in, I think, week 2. You need to use reinforcement. That's the science. We use reinforcement when we find people engaging in behaviors that we like to see and providing them with something internal and or external to increase that behavior to continue to happen more and more often. We use reinforcement to increase motivation, right? We use reinforcement to get a good behavior started. We often provide more reinforcement, praise or tokens or other things to get a good behavior going. And then we can fade back a little bit as that new skill and that new behavior has taken shape. We don't have to provide as much reinforcement. We provide reinforcement to keep good behavior going and to teach new skills. So when you're teaching your class something that's difficult, you might want to increase the reinforcement or the rewards. Does that have to be a class movie at the end of the day, every day? Absolutely not. But praise and motivation, and letting the kids work together. There's a lot of things that you can do that are fun for them, that would be reinforcing for them after they've engaged in something that's difficult. So let's talk about our kids. Your student motivation. Is the task or activity interesting? And so think about what you're doing, how you're teaching, what kind of stories do you tell? What kind of lessons are you giving? Is it lecture with a PowerPoint presentation? Oh, I'm a bad example of that. Is it something that the kids are having discussion and partner work and maybe an art project or something like that, making our instruction enticing to our kids. Is it fun? Is it simple enough to be enjoyable? Is the outcome reinforcing to them? We have kids that could care less what grade they get. Do they have satisfaction when they complete a project or a worksheet? Sometimes the answer is no, and we have to provide something to get those kids desiring and motivating them to engage in the work that we're asking them to do. So I taught for a while in elementary school, in a school that was for special education children, but it was general education curriculum. And so I had a really great lesson on simple machines. And I had a PowerPoint that was interactive. I thought it was just the best lesson plan ever. And I would get to that lesson plan the next year and I would look at it and I would go, it's okay, but I have so many other ideas I'm going to add to or change this year and make it better, right? And that's how we are honing our craft and becoming a better teacher when we learn from what we did last year and add to it and make it better. So I had the PowerPoint and I worksheets and I had some fun activities, but then I went and we did like a scavenger hunt. We went around the room or the school and we had the kids mark off what kind of simple machines they saw around the school building. We also watched the Rube Gold machine. I don't know if you guys have ever seen that, but it's like where the marble comes down and hits the umbrella and the umbrella hits the bowling ball and all the chain reactions. And they have pulleys and levers and wheels and inclined planes and all of these things in the video. And so I showed it once at the beginning of the lesson. And the kids would mark down how many simple machines they thought they saw. And then I would show it on the last day of the lesson so the kids could compare what they've learned. And it's a fun video. It's 4 or 5 minutes long, but it's engaging them with different modalities besides myself just standing up there and talking. So really making instruction and making learning fun. So do your kids enjoy being at school? Are they successful? Do they perform well academically? Do they have positive social interactions? Do they have good relationships with teachers and staff? The kids that you say yes to that, they don't need your help. They're fine. They would be just fine if you didn't show up at work. You would have one of them saying, I know that the science book is up here somewhere and I think we're on chapter 7. The kids that need you are the kids that you would answer no to any of these questions. They need you to help them to increase their desire and their motivation. So think about this. Why is a student not engaging in work? Why are they defiant? There's a reason. And when they're engaging in that type of behavior, they're communicating something to you. And so sitting back and pondering and being thoughtful about what you know about this student, finding out things that you might not know about this student, and trying to determine if it's a skill deficit or a will deficit, or maybe a little bit of both. And then when you have an answer, you can go through and change some of your practices as appropriate to determine, what kind of a deficit it is, and then changing your behavior to, in effect, change their behavior. So tier 1 tools are appropriate and motivating instructional practices. So what is appropriate? That's your ability or your skill level. What is motivating? That's your desire and your will. So we're going to talk about providing high quality instruction, understanding and following IEPs, and then engineering the environment. So here we have high quality instruction. This is the I do, if you use that terminology. And I apologize, it looks like some of the pictures on the slides are covering the words. And so I will fix that before I have Dina share that out. I apologize for that. Be prepared with your instruction. I've seen teachers that go up to the book and they're hurrying to try to scan what the lesson is for today. And being prepared, you can think about all the fun things that you can add to make your instruction more fun. Use a fun tone, incorporate multimodality activities. Like I talked about with my simple machines lesson, we went on a scavenger hunt around the school. We had audio and visual things. We actually did a project where the kids used a pulley or a lever or both and made different things. And so really helping them to really take in their learning. Make sure you activate prior knowledge. You may review prior content and then link the knowledge that you're going through today, the lesson for today, to that prior knowledge so that they have something to tether that to. Be explicit in your instruction, give examples and non-examples. Model your thinking process. When I have a double-digit number and I add another double-digit number before that, and in the tens column or the ones column, I might have 9 and a 3, I'm going to have to carry a 1 in there. How do I think through that process? How do I know what kind of academic language am I using when I demonstrate that? And so demonstrate that thinking process for our kids, whether they have a disability or not. Our kids need to learn what that thought process is to figure things out. And you can use that across any subject. Use stories and charts and visuals and songs and acronyms and movement. It can be so much fun and so much more engaging if you're using multimodality activities. And note those that aren't paying attention. What do they need? How can we help them to be engaged in their learning? So maybe it's a peer intervention where you have partners doing things together. Maybe it's that they need to go grab a drink and they're tired and they need to stand up a little bit. So we have an activity where you're standing and moving a little bit. Look and see what those kids are doing or not doing, and think about what their needs might be, and if it's a skill deficit or a will deficit, and what you're doing to help them access their education. The we do. This is the part that we do it together. As sometimes as teachers, we forget this part. We go right from the I do to the you do. I'm going to give a lesson and then you're going to have a worksheet, right? And that's just not good teaching. We know that that's not where the learning occurs. It's more of a time filler. And so the we do is we practice together as much as it takes. And you that have been through your teaching programs, you know gradual release is where we provide a lot of support up front and kids do a little bit less, but gradually they're taking over more and more of that piece where you're supporting them. They don't need that as much. I had a teacher that loved this video, the we do, we D, and take off the O. This is a lot of practice, but this is sometimes how much practice it takes. You can also use whiteboards. It's really great for formative assessments. If you're checking to see who knows what, you're giving a short answer or short question that requires a short answer, the kids can hold it up on the whiteboard so you can see who has what, who knows what, and where you need to spend time reteaching or modeling other kinds of instructional things to help the kids learn. You may have partner worksheets, you may have checklists. Make sure that you provide the accommodations as appropriate per a child's IEP. But even if the child does not have special education services and they need somebody to write a sentence on their desk so that they can copy it into their science notebook, then for goodness sakes, let's help our kids be successful. Then when they are ready, we let them go, right? So we're going to differentiate that independent work based on ability. You might check the present levels on the student's IEP. I'm working with a little girl right now in the Salt Lake City area. She's in 6th grade. Her reading level is a beginning 1st grade reading level. So when the teacher said that she blew up at school and ended up being suspended, I asked what happened, and the teacher said, well, I handed her out a science worksheet. And so this teacher sent me a picture of the science worksheet, and most of the words on that worksheet, this little girl, although she's in 6th grade, she can't read it. And so I asked her, I said, so looking at that worksheet, let's just look at the title of the worksheet and the instructions. What words in that title can this little girl read? And it was and the. That really doesn't tell you how to do that worksheet. And so that little girl has learned behaviors to argue with the teacher and get kicked out of class, and she gets out of work. And you think about that across her whole day. If she's in 6th grade and she's on a beginning 1st grade reading level, every subject throughout her school day is going to be really, really difficult. How is that appropriate to differentiate within that environment, or does she need a different environment and more restricted services on her IEP? Make sure you're providing any accommodations the kids need to be successful. And if you're helping one of your students and you're doing the same thing over and over to accommodate them, I would write that down and let your admin or your special education team know, because maybe there is something going on there that needs to be addressed. It's great for formative assessment. My mantra is kind of walk around, talk around. I tell teachers this is a really great time to get your grading done, so you're not taking anything home. Walk around, grade in the moment. Help if you see that somebody missed number 2, you might put a little dot on their paper and say, hey buddy, check number 2 out. If you need help, just raise your hand. I'm going to be right here. Right? So you're there to support their learning so that they're not really able to be unsuccessful. We're helping them and making them be successful by providing them whatever they need to be so. It's also a good time for small group instruction. If you've got kids that are able to independently work and everything is on the level that they can access that independently, you'll be able to do some other things eventually. And then it's a good time, like I said, to grade in the moment and provide feedback. And then reflect. I think as a teacher, we have so much to do, and we, at least in my experience, I guess I can't speak for all of us, to just sit quietly at the end of the day for a couple of minutes and just think, what went well? I know there's a lot of things that go really well, and then what didn't go well? And what do I need to change? Is there anything that I can improve on to get my kids to be engaged in their learning? And then looking at individual students and deciding what do they need. All right, the next part is to know and follow the child's IEP if they have one. There's a ton of accommodations that you can give to a child that has a disability so that they can access their general education curriculum. I did a presentation for TASE a while back, and I got to learn a lot about accommodations I didn't even know about. There's some that just are pretty standard across IEPs that we see, like reduction in work, headphones, maybe some modified assignments, chunked instruction, extended time. What do those things mean, right? And how do you apply those things? Is it that extended time is that this kid can turn in any of his work until the last day of the term? And so if he turns in 40 assignments the night before the end of the term, then you're upgrading for 2 days. What does this mean? This is where you collaborate with the special education team to know how to appropriately implement the accommodations on that child's IEP. And if there's something on the IEP that you find yourself delivering that child needs to access their education, you will bring that up to that special education team and let them know that this is something that they're needing quite a bit, and see if that can be written into their IEP. The last thing is to engineer the environment. So obviously we want to make a comfortable atmosphere. We want to have the temperature in the room comfortable if we can. I know sometimes we don't always have control of that. I know my son-in-law is a middle school math teacher, bless his heart. And he likes the room to be about 60. And I just said, you can't have the room that cold. Those kids are not going to be able to learn if they're too cold. And so he bought this cute little, well, I don't know if it's cute, but he bought this neck brace type thing, and it has a fan right here that he just turns it on, and this fan blows right on his face so that his kids are comfortable in their environment. Make sure the lighting is appropriate. I was in a school last week where the little girl kept turning the light off, and I thought, you know, whether the light hurts her eyes or whether she may have a headache, I don't know, but she kept turning the light off. And is there a way that you can allow more natural light into your room, or make sure that the lighting is comfortable for everybody? Making sure the noise is controlled. I was on a meeting today with one of my behavior specialists that works in one of our public schools here. And he said that these kids were going down the hallway. It was one class, but it was so loud. And he's like, look, the door is even closed. And he showed me the door. And I thought, well, you know, probably not the best learning environment when the kids are all going crazy and it's too noisy that we can't focus and learn. And then make sure your walkways are appropriately implemented, making sure that kids that may have more difficulty focusing are not sitting by major thoroughfares in the classroom or by the door or by the window, so that they have less distractions. Maybe you put them in the front of the room or in the corner, or use a study carrel. Like, what do the kids need to have to help them learn? Another way you can engineer the environment to reduce some of the behaviors we're talking about is to gradually transition from a preferred activity to a non-preferred activity. So don't go from a 10, which might be recess for some kids, it might not, and then come in and say, we're going to have a math test, right? Some of those kids will be like, no, we're not. So how do we engineer our environment to have the kids coming from something that's really awesome and to something that's a little bit more in line with what we're doing, and gradually transition them to that test? And sometimes I don't even use the word test because that freaks kids out. So sometimes I'll just say, we're going to do a math worksheet and we're going to have a couple of minutes to spend on it, and then we're going to see, where we're at. And that seems to calm some of the nerves from some of our kids. Maybe we did. I was going to say maybe. We did talk about explicitly providing the expectations and the rules. What does that look like in your classroom? And rules have consequences. You have consequences to following the rules, like you get to go to recess on time, you get all of your free time, whatever those consequences are for kids that follow the rules is awesome. And then consequences for not following the rules. You might miss a couple of minutes of recess. You might miss a couple of minutes of free time. Don't make it all or nothing. Don't take anything all away, because then our kids have nothing to hold on to. So make sure that those consequences are logical and natural in your environment. Provide choice, but don't force compliance. I've been working with this 6th grade girl that I told you guys about, and the teacher's main concern is that this girl engages in arguing. Well, arguing takes more than one person. And so when she says, I'm not going to do this, right now the teacher's going to say, okay, we'll come back to it later. Instead of, no, you need to sit down, no, and re-presenting the demand, she has said she's not going to do it. We can come back to it later when she's in a better space, instead of fighting that battle. That's not a hill that I want to die on. A lot of times, if we focus on our relationship and we don't focus on compliance, we can get that kid to start engaging in more and more work, because they will do that because they like you. If we are forcing compliance, that is coercive. And there are 10 different types of coercion, and I'm really good at a couple of them. But they create worse relationships, and they create a cycle of where the kids' behaviors get worse. And so punishing a behavior by providing a reprimand or some other of those types of things, they cause harm to kids, and they cause worse behavior in kids. Intersperse more difficult tasks with simple ones. I think we talked about this in week 1, where you may have something that's really difficult, or maybe a little bit, maybe not as fun. And then your next activity should be something that's a little bit easier or more enjoyable or more fun, so that kids aren't working at the hardest level of their brain capacity all day long. Have a consistent schedule and follow it every day. It's the same every single day. Just like, I know you guys park in the same parking spot every day. The kids want consistency in a schedule too. And so let's give them that schedule that's consistent day in and day out, so they don't have to wonder what's coming. Where a lot of our kids deal with trauma and a lot of upheaval maybe in their lives, having something consistent at school and well run and well managed in your classroom can really be a lifesaver for them. And then some of our kids just don't like it when we use quiz or work or test. Note that those are all 4-letter words, right? We want to use fun. We're going to do a super fun project. We're going to have a super awesome discussion. I'm really excited. The words you use, the tone of voice, and how you present something really affect how it is received and how it is responded to. When we have more difficult tasks, you want to provide a stronger reinforcer or reward. So if we're finishing up a group project and it's a lot of work and it's been really hard, then maybe when the kids are done, they can watch a short video clip, or they can read stories to each other in the reading nook, or they can listen to a book on tape as a class, or they can do other things. They can be academic in nature, but it should be something that they think is fun, so that it's a reward for completion of the task that was difficult. Be available and have options for students that need additional support. Being available is that walk around, talk around, right? It is walking around, making sure kids are not writing the wrong answers down, They're not sleeping, laying there on their worksheet, but you're helping them to be engaged in their work. I saw a really great demonstration of a teacher. I won't say her name because I did not ask her permission, but in Riverton last week, where there was a child. I went in to observe him. He's laying on the desk and kind of moaning. It wasn't disruptive, but he was clearly experiencing something and not wanting to do what she had asked him to do. So she gave him a prompt, I need you to get your math book out, bud, and turn to page 11. And he laid there and moaned and groaned. And about a minute later, she circled back around. She had been helping other children, other students. She circled back around and she said, hey, bud, why don't you scoot your chair out and I'll get your book for you? That is supportive proximity. That is supportive, meaning she didn't give him an opportunity to be unsuccessful. She's going to help him in a kind, loving, compassionate way to be on task. So she got the book, he moved his seat out. She said, thanks, bud. She grabbed the book out. She opened it to the right page. He picked up his pencil and she took that opportunity to do the very perfect thing, which was, oh my gosh, thank you for getting ready to work. I'm going to give you 2 smiley faces on your desk. She put the 2 smiley faces on right there and the kid completed 2 pages of work and was on task the rest of the class period. It's amazing that when we use these scientific principles, it's not rocket science, but it is science, that these things work. They work. And when we have kids that engage in the right behavior when they're reinforced for doing the right things. She could have handled that totally opposite and said, okay, bud, get your name on your paper now and then do these 2 pages. That is probably more of what I would have done when I was a teacher, but there is a better way. And she did perfect. She said, oh my gosh, thanks for grabbing your pencil. I'm going to give you 2 smiley faces. She turned that negative interaction to a positive interaction, and it worked, and it kept him working for the next 20 to 30 minutes. Provide an activity when students complete the task demand. Have something for them to do, not just look at a book. Have some games, have art projects, let them write test questions, and then say, whoever's test question I use on the test, it has to have the test question and the answer. I'll give you an extra point on your assessment. Make it fun, make it engaging, and make it academic. It doesn't have to be something that is not tied to the academics in your room. When I was a principal, I told my teachers, I don't want to see The Incredibles being played in your classroom. I would love to see anything that's academic, and there are so many fun learning movies that you can access for free that enhance the kids' learning and not just letting them sit there and engage in something that does not have any educational value. All right, so we've covered appropriate instructional practices, high quality instruction, following an IEP if there is one, and engineering the environment. Now we're going to talk about motivation. This is something that encourages you to do something. How do you motivate yourself? Somebody asked a question in week 1, don't we want to try to get kids to engage in the right behavior because they have that intrinsic motivation? And the answer is 100% yes, we do. Sometimes our kids need a little bit of extrinsic motivation while they're learning how to experience that intrinsic motivation, right? And so you think about yourself as an adult. Do any of you guys use your gas points? Do any of you guys go to the store and buy the 5 for $5 so you get $5 off, whatever that is? Do any of you guys use a punch card so you get your 10th coffee or soda for free? Or anybody ever go to the movie on Tuesday when it's cheaper? These are practices that are in your environment as an adult to help you engage in behaviors that people want you to engage in. They're motivating you by providing points, punch cards, and cheaper movies. We can do that for our kids too. So think about yourself as an adult. What motivates you to go do something? You want a good deal, you want something out of it. So do our kids, and they can do that at school, and it is appropriate. The Harvard Center for the Developing Child said the best way to sustain motivation is to support internal drivers with the right kind of external feedback. Does that need to be a sticker? No, it can be praise. It can be a sticker and praise while the kid is learning that they like praise better than the sticker anyway, right? And so what do we need to do to help our kids begin to be motivated and continue to be motivated? So how do you currently handle work refusal? If you have a kid that's not engaging in their work, are you ignoring them and letting them sleep? Are they arguing with you? Are you providing prompts or a series of prompts until you threaten to send them to the office, or call their uncle to tell them how bad they're being today. We want to make simple changes in our behavior that make their behavior better. And you can make those changes to make your activities and tasks more motivating for students, and also how you handle their misbehavior. Motivating practices, make it fun and interesting, have groups and partners, have them put on a play rather than read the book. You know, they can really work on social skills and interaction and functional communication and so many things when we give them other things to do besides sit and listen to us read or sit and watch us do a presentation. Have scavenger hunts, games, art, music, diagrams, chants, all the fun things. Making it motivating for them to engage and learn. They learn better when you have a variety of those things. There's so many great things online that are free or inexpensive. If you find something that's awesome, share it around, because a lot of times as teachers, we have so much to do, so much data to collect, so much curriculum to get through. Many times we may not feel like we have time to go online and find some of these things. Some people are musically inclined or very good artists, and they may be able to come with some ideas of things you can do to enhance your practice as a teacher and make your lessons more enjoyable. You can do answers on the computer. There's so many great computer programs now where kids' answers can be all projected on the board so we can see how everybody answered. There's Kahoot. There's all kinds of different computer programs to help kids engage in their learning. Opportunities to respond. We talked about that. I can't remember, but in one of these sessions, we talked about how to increase your opportunities to respond so that all kids are on task, not just the kid that's raising his hand and answering the question and everybody else becomes off task. We have everybody on task, and that's awesome to be able to have that power in your classroom. Give praise. Praise is free. We've talked a lot about it. I sent some articles out a couple of weeks ago. I hope that some of you read those. It's amazing what the science of just providing praise to students at school will get you. It's magical. Rewards, we talked a little bit about that earlier, having them do something and then there's some kind of a break time or a downtime or some kind of a small thing in the schedule that's already built in. So you're not having to say, okay, we're going to watch a class movie, but maybe they've got things that are already built into your schedule that you're forcing. One of those being recess, right? So having that expectation, and then we go to recess, that gives you a really good, clear time to provide those consequences of doing or not doing the work, right? All right, I have this checklist that you guys, I will send out with to Dina, and she can share it with you. But optimal instruction, there's just questions that I ask myself. This is not from any university. This is just what I have found in my practice working with different teachers. You know, having them kind of go through a checklist. Are my lessons fun, interesting, and well planned? Is there something there that you can do to make your lessons better in any of those areas? Is my pacing appropriate? Do I use a variety of activities to keep students engaged? If you haven't tried choral responding or partner work or group discussions, hand signals, all of those things, please spend some time and incorporate those. It makes your classroom so much more fun. And then you can see that everybody's engaged in their learning, not just one or two kids that can focus and raise their hand to answer all the questions, right? And then, you know, the kids that you call on them to answer the question and they don't know the answer. Let's not waste time and humiliate kids. Let's get everybody engaged in their learning and have fun. If you lecture and give worksheets, there are so many better ways to do things. Not that the kids don't need that lecture part. That's part of the I do, right? And so really looking through the slide that has those steps for the I do, that's science. And I feel like our profession gets so far away from the science sometimes that we get into this foofy cute, all the foofy cute things. But the things that were listed on that slide, even though they were written maybe in layman's terms or maybe a little bit more fun, they're all science. You want all of those components to be in your lesson plan, in your I do. If you don't, find one or two and choose those and set a goal on how you can incorporate those things so that you have a very robust, high quality teaching. And then think about the purpose for your worksheets. Is it a time filler? Is it that you need to see if they've mastered the standard or not? Are there other alternatives to those worksheets that the kids can engage in that might be more fun and enhance their learning rather than just, maybe not being as effective as a worksheet, especially if they get a lot wrong or they don't do it at all, right? And so what are some better practices than giving the kids a worksheet? I know our curriculum is very tied to instruction and worksheet. I think that you can play a game of Family Feud and learn how to do that. And you divide that family in half and you have family one and family two and play Family Feud and ask some of those questions to see if they know those answers. And that would be a lot more fun and enhance their learning and engagement and so many other skills, right, than a worksheet. And worksheets actually don't even have a good effect size and sometimes a negative effect size in some grades. And so we really want to see what the purpose of our worksheets are. You need to go to the bathroom. I get that. Give a worksheet so you can go to the bathroom, but really look at your practice to say, am I really giving them what they need and what's the purpose behind it? Do you have clear expectations, rules, and consequences for following and not following? Is the objective introduced? Hey guys, today we are going to learn about double-digit multiplication. Is that posted, written on your board? Maybe it says, I can do double-digit multiplication. And do you refer to it often? When I start a lesson, I have the objective on the board. I continuously refer to it, and the kids know exactly what's going to be on their exit ticket so that they know that they're responsible for their own learning. And this is what they're going to have to show me before they leave class. If they get it done, they get to go to recess on time. If they don't get it done, I'm going to stay back and help them get it done for 2 minutes, and then they get to go to recess time, right? Do you provide strong instruction? What does the I do look like? If you need help in these areas and you have a mentor teacher or an experienced teacher, have them come in and watch you, and you go in and watch them and take little pieces from them that you like, that you can implement to enhance your practice. I mean, that's what I did. And I think that's what a lot of people do. They walk by and they're like, oh, what are they doing in there? Oh, I could do that. That's a great movement activity. That's a great video. That's a great project, and share those things. Are the kids engaged during your instruction? If they're not, why not? What can we do better? Do you incorporate frequent opportunities to respond? Do you have enough practice time? Remember that slide with the we do, right? And it gets that gradual release of I do less and the kids take over more. Do the kids keep up with the activities and the instruction? Is downtime minimized or structured? Some of our kids can't tolerate downtime or transition time. We can be smart and structure that for them so that they can be successful in that. And I think I gave some examples in a previous presentation. I'm not sure if it was the primary or secondary, but there is information somewhere about that. When you give independent work for your kids, is it in accordance with their skill level? It may not be grade level. It may not be the instructional level, but where they're at right now, can they do that independently with pretty much ease? Do I implement the IEP, the accommodations? Do I know the present levels? This 6th grade girl that I'm working with, do her teachers know, all of her teachers know, that she is on a 1st grade reading level and how that affects her throughout her day? What kind of supports do they give? What's on the IEP? Is her placement appropriate? There are so many discussions that can happen surrounding that implementation of the IEP. Am I available to support students while they're completing work? Walk around, talk around. Is there anything I can do to help individual students? Thinking about what they need, if it's a motivation deficit or a skill deficit, how do you handle each one? And then there is a teacher checklist for instruction that I will send you guys in your emails. All right. Oh my gosh, I talked so fast, you guys. So we're going to review the objectives. We talked about reasons why students may engage in misbehavior. Generally, it's because they're escaping something they don't want to do or they can't do. There's usually no other reason for it. And there are scientific ways, which we talked about a whole bunch. They're simple, but they're effective. And when you implement them with fidelity, they work. It's science. It can't not work. It's science, and it's awesome. So we learned a lot of effective strategies to hopefully implement simple things that you can implement to help kids be on task and compliant and follow directions and complete their work. Here's some of the things we talked about. I'd love you guys to take 1 or 2 things that we talked about today and set a goal for yourself. These presentations are every other week, except for this week because I messed up. But taking 1 or 2 things every time we meet and say, what's going to be the biggest bang for my buck? What's going to make the biggest behavior change in my classroom? Do I have the skill to implement it? What is that going to look like? And give yourself baby steps to enhancing your practice as a teacher. So there's a few things that we talked about today: understanding the IEP, engineering the environment, making it fun and interesting, using partners or groups, doing fun things like number 6, computer answers, opportunities to respond, praise and rewards, and then consequences for doing or not doing the work. So there's your weekly challenge. Take 1 or 2 things, and we're changing our behavior. And when we do that, it changes our students' behavior for the better. We're becoming a better teacher. We're providing better instruction. We have more tools in our toolbox because the kids in our world today are not getting any easier. We have to try to stay 1 step ahead of them so that we're preventing any behaviors and we're supporting kids how they need to be supported. There is my email address. You're always welcome to email me. You can put questions or comments on the Jamboard. I can't really go through very specific things. If you have a specific student that's doing something, I can't really address that in this type of a group. But if you have that kind of need, I would talk to your administrator and see what supports there are for you in your location. But you can always reach out to me, and I do respond to every email that I get. It may take me a day or 2, but I will respond to you, I promise. And I guess I don't have any sources, but I do. So let me get that slide put together for you guys, and it will be on the PowerPoint that Dina sends out. Anyway, you guys, thank you for being here. I think we're done a couple minutes early, or maybe right on time. I don't know, but thank you for what you guys do every day. I know that working with kids can be hard and exhausting. I appreciate you. I have 6 kids of my own. I sure appreciated my teachers especially after I became one and realized that you're always working. Even when I'm on family vacation on a cruise, I'm thinking I need to buy those scorpion paperweights for all of my students because we're doing desert dioramas, right? You're always working, and I appreciate that you do work so hard for your kids to make school fun and help our kids be successful. I will see you guys next week. I know that we have no time to really have between sessions, so I'll see you next Tuesday and then Thursday as well if you guys are joining the Thursday session. So thank you, and we'll see you guys then.
Christine, thank you so much. This has been wonderful. Looks like I didn't see much on the Jamboard, but there was a resource on there. So, and I do want you to know, I went ahead and reposted the links to each Jamboard. Even if your last name is not that, feel free to get on and you can look at each other's Jamboards to see questions or comments being put on there. And Christine does look at those and she does respond to those. So it looks like I do have, let me just take a quick look. If somebody, oh, they're just saying thank you.
Thank you so much.
Yeah, and so if somebody does have a quick question and you need it, if it's a general one, let me know and we can unmute you. But if not, go ahead and post those on those Jamboards. And as we said, Christine will respond to those. So and otherwise, we will see you next week on Tuesday for the primary and Thursday for the secondary. And if you did not register for both of those sessions, even if you are not a secondary or, if you're not a secondary teacher, feel free to join because all of the content that she talks about and goes over could definitely be scaled to your grade level, whatever grade, even preschool.
It definitely can, and it's totally different content that I'm doing here. So it would be beneficial if you guys jumped in. There's nothing that's repeated in both places. I tried to make it pretty diversified for everybody. So hopefully you guys find benefit in some of this stuff. And thank you, Dina.
Yeah, thank you so much. All right, well, with that, we'll go ahead and close this. And thank you all again for joining us, and we'll see you soon.
Bye, guys.